Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and now that my two obligatory informative videos are done for the day, it's time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. And one of the most requested videos this week is V-Shrunk. V-Shrunk gave us 3 tips for things that he sees wrong with the lat pull down. The lat pull down. You know what, Vince? I see a lot of things wrong with your pull-ups and your bench presses. But we'll cover that in this video too. So let me go ahead and put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. You know, the funniest part, actually, the first thing he got wrong is when he said the lat pull down is a really important exercise. Really? I don't know. I've got a pretty big back, and I don't own any cables. I have a home gym. I have 900 pounds of free weights. I have 900 pounds of road plates. I don't think the lat pull down is that important. Now, he did make the caveat, though, unless you're doing some sort of pull-up or chin-up. Okay, well, there we go. How about we talk about pull-ups and chin-ups being important exercises? All right, those are pretty important. Those are pretty important. I'm going to agree with that. Why are we even worried about the lat pull down? Why don't you just get a band for people who are too weak to do pull-ups? Instead of having them do the fat pull downs, which again I heard a trainer say years ago, is the exercise that you have people do who are too fat to do a pull-up. You have them do fat pull downs. Why don't you just hook a reverse band up and just do assisted pull-ups with the reverse band? Problem solved, right? Till they're strong enough to do pull-ups. Makes a hell of a lot more sense than doing this silly-ass cable exercise. Now the ironic part is that all the things that he said are a problem, on the lat pull down, he actually does on other exercises. The exact same things that he said are a lat pull down problem, and that's what's funny. Number 1, what was the first one that he said? What was the first one that he said? Let's see, I know the last one was not doing full range of motion. Yeah? Oh, it was swinging, it was momentum. Now, here's the ironic part. Why is momentum a problem on the lat pull down? Well, because it doesn't isolate the muscle. You can't isolate the muscle. Look, if you cheat on an exercise to use more weight, the primary movers are still there. In other words, if you come all the way down, even if you cheat a little bit, your lats are still working, your biceps are still working. It's not actually a problem as far as the middle of the range goes. You're probably getting through 2/3 of the rep range, you're probably getting the same tension on the lats and biceps by using momentum that you would with the lighter weight stricter, all right? Strict form doesn't guarantee more muscle fiber recruitment. Now, in the case of a lat pull down, why does it matter here? Because you're using momentum at the start. Probably the first 6 inches of the range of motion, what's happening? You aren't using the lats. You're not using the muscles at all, so you're losing part of the range of motion. You're essentially turning it into a partial. That's why people do it. Why do people do partial reps? So they can lift more weight, right? Because it's easier. Using momentum on this particular exercise in the way that he demonstrated, which was, you swing a little bit to get it started, you're essentially turning it into a partial. You're skipping the stretch at the top. You're skipping the stretch at the top so that you can use more weight through the mid-range. You're cheating to turn it into a heavy partial. Well, we know partial reps reduce muscle fiber recruitment. Now, I didn't even get to his third point before I saw this, and I'm like, but Vince, you skip the bottom on pull-ups, right? How's that any different? I would say the bottom is more important than the top. I mean, let's be realistic. With some of these light exercises like this, when you look at what's involved here, right? I think the stretch at the top is more important than the contraction. Because you already get scapular retraction on other exercises. In other words, your deadlift, right? If you're deadlifting, you're already getting the scapular retraction. You're getting that range of the motion. To be honest, you really are. You're holding that into isometric strength. I think that's a point I've made before. Like one reason I don't make a big deal on pull-ups or rows or any of that about guys trying to hold a contraction with scapular retraction, because if you're deadlifting and doing things like that, you're already getting that with a much, much heavier weight, that isometric part. And it's not really a big deal. You're not losing anything in terms of overall development if you're deadlifting. So it's not a problem, and everyone should be deadlifting. You're all deadlifting, right? You should be. If you're not deadlifting, you need to get on top of that shit. So that being said, I don't think it's a big deal. But what you are missing is the stretch at the top. As far as overall muscle fibers, what people need to remember when you're dealing through anything in the range of motion on an exercise, you're going to have muscle fibers that can only be recruited at different points in a joint angle. So in other words, when you have a range of motion of an exercise, you have a lot of muscle fibers that can be recruited at any point in that muscle, but you're going to have certain parts within the muscle that are only going to be recruited through certain parts of the range of motion. So if you are trying to maximally develop that muscle or build maximum strength in that muscle, either one, they go hand in hand, even though I tend to be more concerned with the strength component. The size component matters for that. So you really do want to maximize hypertrophy through a muscle if you want to make it stronger and perform better. So when you start skipping parts of the range of motion and they don't get worked somewhere, what happens? We're gonna minimize development. We're not going to maximize development. And because a lot of times that scapular retraction and stuff gets worked really effectively on things like our deadlifts and other lifts, it's really that stretch at the top, I feel like, that gets shortchanged a lot. And if you're cheating and not getting the stretch at the top because you're using momentum, you are missing some potential development. So he's right, but it really is only about that part of the range of motion. It's not that the rest of it's being shortchanged, because it really isn't. If you're cheating, the mid-range is not actually, and even the scapular retraction part, it's not getting shortchanged because you're cheating and using momentum to get a heavier weight. But you are losing that stretch at the top. And that stretch at the top matters, but it's more for pull-ups, I think. Because again, lat pull-downs are a silly-ass exercise anyways. They're just fat pull-downs. But we can come to that point. He skips that on his pull-ups. So he's not any better. He's not any better than the guys using momentum. That's one reason he doesn't have that much back development. I mean, Vince has bicep and delts. That's it. That's all he has. There's no chest, no back, no legs. And that's fine if that's what you're chasing, but don't talk about building these things when you don't know how to build them. You can't. Next point he made was talking about skipping the eccentrics. Eccentrics don't matter. He said this silly thing, well, your muscles are stronger on an eccentric than a concentric rep. That's not true. How would they be stronger? Why? Because it's easier? No, it's easier because it's easier. Strength can be clearly defined as a production of force against an external object, right? Or against an external resistance. It's easier to lower a weight than to lift it. Less force is required. That's why it's easier. It's not because you're stronger, it's because you don't have to be as strong. All right, so there's a point he needs to understand there. In other words, less muscle fibers are recruited when lowering a weight than when lifting it. And less muscle fibers are recruited when lifting a weight slower than when lifting it faster. That's pretty well an accepted fact in sports physiology, by the way. Not even a point of debate. So, the eccentric thing, no, you're not missing potential development. If you're skipping eccentrics, what does that mean? That means you're going to have to do more reps. Doing controlled eccentrics on an exercise basically lets you get out of the gym a little faster. In other words, you can probably stimulate as much growth with a 6-rep set as you could with a 10-rep. Right? That's all it means. It means you're going to have to do more reps if you're not doing the eccentric with the same weight, if you're letting it go. But it's not required for growth, and there's a lot of concentric-based exercises. There are concentric-based programs that get people jacked. So saying that you have to do the eccentric, not really. Not really a big deal. But what I would say is that if you're worried about skipping eccentrics and doing concentric only exercises, the last thing you need to be doing is playing around with silly ass shit like cables. That's when you need to be doing pen lay rows and deadlifts and power cleans. Real exercises, right? Things that actually produce benefits. Things that are actually helpful. Instead of silly ass lat pull down. So that might be my point. But the last point he made was actually a great one. It was a great one. Not doing full range of motion. I agree. Range of motion is critical for size and strength. The research is overwhelming. I agree, and he's saying that's the thing he sees people doing wrong. But he does partials on every other exercise but the lat pull down. That's the problem. It's like, Vince, where's your consistency? I've seen you do pull-ups. I've seen you bench press. Why don't you promote full range of motion on the bench press? Why do you stop like a foot from your chest? This is what your bench press looks like. It's like a 4-inch range of motion. And then you wonder why you have no chest. Notice the difference? You have no chest because you don't do a full range of motion on the bench press. Same thing, you have minimal back development because you don't do full range of motion on your pull-ups. You're skipping the bottom. His pull-ups are like this. You know, he doesn't go anywhere near full extension at the top. So my question for Vince is that if you're going to point this out on the lat pull down, and you're correct, you are correct, Why do you do half reps on all the big exercises? You're going to take a silly, piddly ass exercise like the lat pull down, and you're going to make a big deal about range of motion, even though you're correct. But then when it comes to the big movements, the ones that really will put a lot of size on your upper body, how about the bench press, the pull up? Why do you do half reps? You do nothing but half reps. You don't do any full range of motion on them. Apply the same logic that you just applied to the lat pull down to the big exercises. The same logic applies, more so because they have more total potential to recruit muscle fibers, right? They have more potential to recruit even more muscles in the body. Apply the same logic to them. Be consistent, and then I wouldn't give you such a hard time about it. He's right, but the problem is that he's only applying this fantastic rule, which is a great rule, full range of motion. Yeah, it's a good idea, real good idea. He's applying it to the silly-ass exercises and then completely disregards it on the most important ones. And then calls a lat pull-down an important exercise. No, I think the pull-up and the bench press are important exercises, Vince, and you need to apply this range of motion rule that you just gave to those exercises. Let's get some consistency here. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.